Top 10. Gay closet cases of Hollywood's golden age. That will shock you. Welcome to Uncovered Tinseltown. Uncovered. Prepare to be shocked as we pull back the velvet curtain on Hollywood's golden age and expose the secret lives of its biggest stars. Behind the tuxedos, gowns, and glowing spotlights were hidden truths about love, identity, and survival. These 10 legendary figures lived double lives forced into silence by a ruthless industry terrified of anything different. What you're about to discover isn't just gossip, it's the raw reality of fame in the shadows. Watch till the end, hit that subscribe button, and join us as we uncover the secrets they were never allowed to share. Marlon Brando Jr. Born April 3, 1924 in Omaha, Nebraska, remains one of the most iconic figures in cinematic history. Known for redefining the art of screen acting, he delivered powerhouse performances in classics like On the Waterfront, A Streetcar, named Desire, and The Godfather. But beyond his groundbreaking film work, Brando's personal life, particularly his sexuality, has long been the subject of speculation, revelation, and cultural fascination. Though married 3 times and the father of at least 11 children, Brando never fit the mold of traditional masculinity Hollywood often demanded. Whispers about his bisexuality began surfacing as early as the 1950s, but it wasn't until a 1976 interview with a French journalist that Brando directly addressed the rumors. Like a large number of men, I too have had homosexual experiences, and I am not ashamed, he stated boldly, an admission that was virtually unheard of for a man of his stature at the time. One of the most enduring rumors links Brando romantically to fellow screen rebel James Dean. The 2014 book, James Dean, Tomorrow Never Comes, alleges a dominant submissive dynamic between the two positioning. Brando as emotionally detached while Dean was infatuated. Additional allegations appear in the controversial biography Brando Unzipped, which claims the actor had liaisons with other Hollywood greats like Montgomery Clift, Sir John Gielgud, and even Cary Grant. While many of these assertions remain disputed, they persist in the public consciousness. Perhaps the most headline-grabbing revelation came in 2018 when legendary music producer Quincy Jones declared that Brando had slept with comedian Richard Pryor. In a surprising twist, Pryor's widow Jennifer Lee Pryor confirmed the claim, stating that her husband had written about the encounter in his diaries. However, their daughter Rain Pryor denied it, sparking a family rift and reigniting the debate about how Brando truly lived his life behind the camera. Brando's intense friendship with author and activist James Baldwin added further layers to his complex identity. While never officially confirmed as romantic, their closeness and Baldwin's ambiguous sexual identity left room for speculation. Brando himself once said what was important or lasting was that I walked and sat and dreamed next to a man named James Baldwin. Ultimately, Marlon Brando's legacy remains as multifaceted as the man himself. His courage in breaking taboos helped challenge rigid ideas about masculinity in Hollywood, and his complicated relationships continue to intrigue fans and biographers alike. Whether gay, bisexual, or fluid, Brando's life speaks to the deep personal sacrifices many made to thrive in an industry built on illusion. James Byron Dean, born February 8, 1931 in Marion, Indiana, became a symbol of youthful defiance and emotional depth in a time when Hollywood idolized conformity. Though he only starred in 3 major films, East of Eden, Rebel Without a Cause, and Giant Dean's legacy is immortal. Yet behind the smoldering gaze and brooding persona was a deeply conflicted man whose personal life was as complex as the roles he played. Dean's untimely death at age 24 in a high-speed car crash has immortalized him in myth. But it's his elusive sexuality that continues to spark discussion among historians and fans alike. In a conservative era when homosexuality was considered career suicide, Dean neither loudly proclaimed nor outright denied the rumors. When asked about his sexual preferences, he once cryptically stated, "No, I am not a homosexual." but I'm also not going through life with one hand tied behind my back. Numerous biographers have documented alleged same-sex relationships, including with Rogers Brackett, an influential radio director who mentored Dean early in his career. Some claim Brackett's support helped launch Dean's success, though it came with unspoken personal ties. Others point to actor Clifton Webb photographer Sanford Roth, and even screen icon Marlon Brando. The rumored relationship with Brando is the most infamous. Dean reportedly submitted to a submissive role, becoming obsessed with the emotionally distant Brando, who allegedly dismissed Dean as too clingy. Though he was romantically linked to actresses Pier Angeli and Ursula Andress, many close to Dean believed those relationships were manufactured to preserve his image. Angeli later married singer Vic Damone, and her breakup with Dean was widely speculated to have been orchestrated by studio heads and her strict Catholic mother, who disapproved of Dean's rebellious lifestyle and rumored bisexuality. Dean's personal writings, letters, and photographs, some lost to time and others kept sealed, suggest a man who battled internalized shame and societal judgment. His former UCLA classmates noted his frequent presence in Los Angeles' underground gay scene, a world known only to a hidden community of insiders and power brokers. It's worth noting that Dean's art was rooted in emotional authenticity. His tortured performances weren't simply acts. They were extensions of the emotional isolation and secrecy he experienced in his real life. In many ways, his refusal to conform sexually mirrored the roles he chose vulnerable men at odds with the world. In a Hollywood era of illusion, James Dean was dangerously real. While the truth about his sexuality remains officially unconfirmed, the consistent whispers from friends, lovers, and biographers suggest a man who lived outside the lines romantically and artistically. For many, James Dean was not just a rebel without a cause, but a rebel with a secret. Spencer Bonaventure, Tracy. Born April 5, 1900 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, was a two-time Academy Award winner and one of MGM's most bankable stars for over 3 decades. Known for his commanding presence and effortless delivery, Tracy defined masculine gravitas on screen. But behind the camera, he led a life plagued by personal demons and an inner war with his identity, one that Hollywood's golden machinery helped keep hidden. Publicly, Tracy was portrayed as a devout Catholic family man married to Louise Treadwell with 2 children. But in reality, their relationship was estranged for most of his adult life, and they lived apart for decades. Tracy's most famous romantic attachment was with Katharine Hepburn, a union often celebrated in Hollywood lore. However, many biographers and close associates insist their relationship was mostly platonic and orchestrated to uphold Tracy's heterosexual image. Scotty Bowers, a well-known Hollywood fixer who later published a memoir, alleged that Tracy was among his regular clients, secretly arranging male companionship for the actor during the 1940s and 50s. Bowers described Tracy as deeply tormented by his sexual identity and said that alcohol became his escape. Tracy's lifelong battle with alcoholism, his sudden mood swings and repeated breakdowns may have stemmed in part from this internal conflict. Tracy's Catholic guilt weighed heavily on him. He never divorced Louise, citing his religion as the reason, even though they were effectively separated for decades. This excuse, some say, also served to protect his carefully curated public persona. Being a devout man of faith in an era that criminalized homosexuality created an impossible bind, one that reportedly led to many sleepless nights, public outbursts, and health problems. Despite his private struggles, Tracy's professional career flourished. He was nominated for 9 Academy Awards and worked with some of the greatest actors of his time. Yet in his later years, he seemed increasingly reclusive, almost weary of the burden he carried. He died in 1967, just 17 days after filming Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, his final film with Hepburn. While there is no concrete on-record confession from Tracy regarding his sexuality, numerous posthumous accounts, both from insiders and investigative biographies, paint the portrait of a man divided. A man who lived his truth in the shadows, navigating a system that would not have forgiven him for doing otherwise. For many, Spencer Tracy remains the quintessential Hollywood leading man. But the story behind his polished image is one of repression, loneliness, and survival in a time that demanded silence. Roy Harold Scherer Jr. Born Roy Harold Scherer Jr. on November 17, 1925 in Winnetka, Illinois, became one of the most iconic leading men of 1950s and 1960s Hollywood. Towering at 6 feet 5 inches with chiseled features and a deep voice, he embodied the ideal of American masculinity. To millions of adoring fans, he was the romantic heartthrob in films like Pillow Talk Giant and Magnificent Obsession. But beneath the surface of his polished public persona lay a life cloaked in secrecy, fear, and silent resilience. Hudson's ascent in Hollywood began when he signed with agent Henry Wilson, who gave him the stage name Rock Hudson. Wilson, who was openly gay in private circles, played a pivotal role in shaping Hudson's image into a heterosexual dreamboat. At the same time, he used his connections and influence to keep Hudson's private life carefully buried. In an era when being openly gay could destroy a career overnight, Hudson lived behind a facade, navigating studio contracts and media scrutiny with military precision. To suppress rumors, Hudson was often paired with female co-stars at public events, and was even married briefly to Phyllis Gates Wilson's secretary. The marriage, which lasted only 3 years, 1955 to 1958, was reportedly more of a publicity arrangement than a romantic relationship. Gates later wrote that she suspected Hudson was gay, and some reports suggest she confronted him about it during their marriage. Despite the intense pressure, Hudson had private relationships with men throughout his life. Friends described him as gentle, loyal, and generous, though often burdened by loneliness. In private circles, he was warm and open-hearted, yet remained fiercely guarded around the press. He took great care to protect his image, knowing the devastating consequences exposure could bring. Tragically, in 1985, Hudson became the first major Hollywood celebrity to die from complications related to AIDS. When the news broke, it stunned the world not only because of the illness, but because it confirmed long-whispered truths about his sexuality. His death humanized the AIDS crisis in a way no other figure could have, forcing both Hollywood and mainstream America to confront their prejudices and misinformation. Hudson's legacy extends beyond his film career. He remains a symbol of the pain and sacrifice endured by LGBTQ+ individuals forced to live double lives in an unforgiving industry. In death, he brought visibility to a silent epidemic. In life, he embodied the bittersweet cost of being a legend in a world that would not accept his truth. Edward Montgomery Clift. Born October 17, 1920 in Omaha, Nebraska, was a rare phenomenon in Hollywood. An actor who brought raw vulnerability and emotional truth to the screen during an era dominated by tough guy personas. He starred in acclaimed classics like A Place in the Sun, From Here to Eternity, and Judgment at Nuremberg, earning 4 Academy Award nominations during his career. But behind his haunting eyes and breathtaking performances was a man tormented by personal demons, societal pressures, and a secret he was forced to carry in silence. Clift's early life was marked by privilege and instability. Raised by an ambitious mother who groomed him for high society, Montgomery, or Monty as friends called him, showed an early talent for acting. He skipped college to pursue theater, quickly gaining respect for his craft. By the late 1940s, he was a rising star in Hollywood, celebrated for introducing method acting to the mainstream before Brando made it famous. But while his on-screen performances brimmed with honesty, Clift was living a double life. As a closeted gay man in a brutally homophobic industry, he carried the constant burden of secrecy. Despite being romantically involved with both men and women, including notable figures such as Jerome Robbins and possibly Elizabeth Taylor, he maintained a public facade of bachelorhood. Only a select few in Hollywood's inner circle knew the truth. In 1956, Clift was involved in a near-fatal car accident that left his face permanently disfigured. The physical scars were obvious, but the emotional damage ran deeper. After the crash, Clift's once flawless career began to unravel. Racked by guilt, pain, and the ongoing need to suppress his identity, he spiraled into addiction, first to painkillers, then to alcohol. Still, he delivered incredible performances post-accident, including his unforgettable role in Judgment at Nuremberg, for which he earned an Oscar nomination with only a few minutes of screen time. His rawness on screen reflected the turmoil he lived with daily. Clift was described by peers as a gentle soul, kind, intelligent, and sensitive, yet deeply haunted. Elizabeth Taylor remained one of his fiercest defenders and dearest friends throughout his life. Clift died on July 23, 1966, at just 45 years old from a heart attack brought on by years of physical and emotional decline. At the time of his death, he was largely forgotten by an industry that once hailed him as its most promising star. But in retrospect, Clift's story has become emblematic of the tragic cost of Hollywood's silence around sexuality and mental health. Today, he is remembered not only as a trailblazing actor, but as a deeply human figure whose private struggle made his public performances all the more powerful. His life remains a cautionary tale of what happens when authenticity is punished, and a reminder of the bravery it took just to exist in his own skin. Archibald Alexander Leach, known to the world as Cary Grant, was born on January 18, 1904, in Bristol, England. He became one of the most iconic leading men in Hollywood history, synonymous with charm, sophistication, and elegance, with films like North by Northwest, Bringing Up Baby. An Affair to Remember and Charade, Grant cemented his place as a cinematic legend. But behind the suave persona lay a complex man with a hidden life that Hollywood never allowed him to fully express. Raised in a working-class family, Leach's childhood was marred by hardship. At the age of 9, he was told his mother had died a lie. In truth, she had been institutionalized, and he wouldn't reunite with her until 2 decades later. These early betrayals haunted him for the rest of his life, contributing to a lifelong struggle with identity, trust, and self-worth. Grant reinvented himself when he emigrated to the U.S., joining vaudeville before breaking into film in the 1930s. With his impeccable style, transatlantic accent, and comedic timing, he soon became Hollywood royalty. Yet despite his outward confidence and charm, there was always a cloud of secrecy surrounding his personal life, especially his relationships. Grant married 5 times, but none of his marriages lasted. The most persistent rumors about his life centered on his decades-long companionship with fellow actor Randolph Scott. The two lived together for years, vacationed together, and posed for photographs that even today raise eyebrows for their intimate domesticity. While both men denied a romantic connection, many insiders believed otherwise. Studios, fearful of scandal, reportedly pressured both actors to maintain a heteronormative public image. Grant's contracts were said to include morality clauses that would penalize him for revealing too much. Interestingly, Grant never seemed to be entirely comfortable in his own skin. In later years, he experimented with LSD under supervised therapy, reportedly to deal with past traumas and internal confusion. These sessions, he claimed, helped him confront painful memories and explore his identity more deeply. Yet he never publicly identified as anything other than heterosexual. Cary Grant's reluctance to speak about his private life speaks volumes about the constraints of the time. In an era where being openly gay or bisexual could destroy a career, silence was survival. Whether he was bisexual, gay, or simply fluid, what remains undeniable is that Grant's life was one of emotional duality, torn between the man the world adored and the man he was behind closed doors. He passed away on November 29, 1986, at age 82, leaving behind a legacy of timeless performances and unanswered questions. Today, Cary Grant is celebrated not only for his unmatched elegance and talent, but also as a figure emblematic of the hidden personal sacrifices Hollywood stars made to maintain their careers. His story challenges us to rethink how we define masculinity, fame, and truth in the spotlight. William Clark Gable. Born on February 1, 1901 in Cadiz, Ohio, rose from humble beginnings to become one of the most iconic stars in cinematic history. Known as the King of Hollywood, Gable's rugged masculinity and on-screen charisma captivated audiences across decades, most memorably in his role as Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind, 1939. Yet beneath his polished public persona lay a far more complicated and controversial private life, one that Hollywood worked hard to keep under wraps. Gable's early years were tough. His mother died when he was just a baby, and he was raised by his father and stepmother. After dropping out of school, Gable worked a series of odd jobs before finding his way to acting. By the 1930s, his chiseled looks and deep voice made him a favorite of studio executives and fans alike. He won an Academy Award for It Happened One Night, 1934, and enjoyed decades of stardom. However, whispers about Gable's personal life never quite disappeared. Despite being married 5 times and linked romantically to many of his leading ladies, persistent rumors followed him suggesting that he was at the very least bisexual. Much of this speculation stemmed from his early days in Hollywood, when he was allegedly part of the same underground male escort scene that others like Scotty Bowers claimed existed during the Golden Age. According to Bowers and various biographers, Gable had intimate encounters with men in his younger years, some possibly for money, long before he became a household name. One particularly persistent story involved George Cukor, the original director of Gone with the Wind, and an openly gay man in private Hollywood circles. It's been said that Gable refused to work with Cukor because Cukor knew about Gable's past in the hustling scene. While this has never been definitively proven, it adds to the layered mystery surrounding Gable's fiercely protected image. Despite the rumors, Gable always maintained a traditionally masculine persona in public. He enjoyed outdoor activities like hunting and was often described as a man's man. But many believe this was, at least in part, an intentional projection to shield him from industry scrutiny and reinforce the archetype of the hyper-masculine American male. Adding another layer to Gable's secretive life was his deeply personal trauma. He fathered a child with actress Loretta Young during the filming of Call of the Wild, 1935, but the child, Judy Lewis, was hidden from the public for decades due to fear of scandal. Gable never publicly acknowledged her. Clark Gable died of a heart attack on November 16, 1960, at age 59. He remains one of the most legendary figures of classic Hollywood, revered for his talent and screen presence. But his legacy is also a haunting reminder of the personal compromises stars made in an era where being anything other than heterosexual could destroy a career. His life, filled with contradictions and silences, exemplifies the hidden costs of fame during the golden age of cinema. Raymond William Stacey Burr. Born on May 21, 1917 in New Westminster, British Columbia, rose to fame through his stoic, commanding roles, most famously as defense attorney Perry Mason, and later as the wheelchair-bound detective in Ironside. But while Burr built a powerful public image as a television icon behind the scenes, he led a deeply private and carefully curated life, one shaped by a need to keep his homosexuality hidden in an era that was unforgiving of any deviation from the heteronormative Hollywood ideal. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, Burr's face was everywhere. As Perry Mason, he became a household name, winning 2 Emmy Awards for the role and starring in over 270 episodes. He followed this with Ironside, which ran from 1967 to 1975 and cemented his reputation as a versatile, authoritative presence on screen. But off-screen, Burr was crafting a fictional life story, one that included a tragic marriage, a lost child, and other invented details designed to keep the press at bay and maintain his leading man image. According to studio-approved biographies, Burr had been married once to an actress named Isabella Ward, though they separated shortly after marrying. In later interviews, Burr mentioned a second wife and a son who had died, but there is no evidence these individuals ever existed. These fabrications were reportedly designed to cover up his longtime relationship with a man named Robert Benavides, a former actor and producer Burr met in the 1960s. Burr and Benavides lived together for over 30 years, sharing not only a personal life, but also business ventures. Together, they bought land in Sonoma County, California, and developed a successful vineyard. Burr referred to Benavides as his business partner, though those close to them understood the depth of their bond. Hollywood insiders knew about Burr's orientation, but public acknowledgement remained elusive. At the time, revealing such a truth would likely have destroyed his career. What makes Burr's story so striking is the extent to which he went to protect his privacy. In an era when tabloids thrived on scandal and moral policing, he chose silence over exposure, inventing entire lives to satisfy public curiosity while deflecting from the truth. His performances, often marked by themes of justice and truth, stand in ironic contrast to the personal deceptions he was forced to maintain. Raymond Burr died of kidney cancer on September 12, 1993, at age 76. In the years following his death, Benavides inherited Burr's estate, including their vineyard and business holdings. While Burr never came out publicly during his lifetime today, he is remembered not only for his commanding performances, but also as another talented actor whose personal truth had to remain hidden due to the brutal demands of mid-century Hollywood. His legacy prompts a deeper reflection on the lives so many were forced to live in secrecy, underlining the painful cost of fame in a time when authenticity was not allowed for those outside the norms. Richard Pryor, born December 1, 1940 in Peoria, Illinois, wasn't just a comedic legend. He was a cultural lightning rod. Known for his unfiltered, raw, and revolutionary stand-up routines, Pryor exposed the harsh realities of racism addiction and his deeply personal struggles in a way no one else dared. But one chapter of his life remains both underexplored and deeply revealing: his complex sexual identity, including relationships with men which challenged the norms of masculinity, celebrity, and race in 20th century America. Raised in a brothel where his mother worked as a prostitute and his grandmother was the madam, Pryor's childhood was turbulent and traumatic. He faced physical abuse, abandonment, and sexual molestation. These experiences not only shaped his comedy, but also left deep scars that influenced his self-worth and sense of identity. Comedy became his outlet, and by the 1970s he had risen to the pinnacle of American stand-up, breaking racial barriers and winning 5 Grammy Awards along the way. In public, Pryor was the face of unapologetic black masculinity, often speaking about sex, drugs, and politics with a mix of vulgarity and brutal honesty. But in private, his life was far more layered. In 2018, his widow, Jennifer Lee Pryor, confirmed long-standing rumors that Richard had a romantic and sexual relationship with fellow Hollywood rebel Marlon Brando in the 1970s. This revelation, once dismissed as tabloid fodder, was later corroborated by music mogul Quincy Jones, who spoke candidly about Pryor's bisexuality. Pryor himself never denied these claims. In fact, he once admitted in his personal journals and in interviews that he had experimented with men during the 1970s, attributing it partly to drug use, but also framing it within his exploration of identity and liberation. This was a bold acknowledgement for a black male celebrity at the time, especially one whose fan base spanned deeply conservative parts of America. In addition to his groundbreaking comedy, Pryor's personal life was tumultuous. He battled cocaine addiction, survived a near-fatal self-immolation in 1980 during a drug binge, and was married 7 times to 5 different women. Later in life, he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, which gradually took away his mobility and voice, though not his biting insight or irrepressible humor. Richard Pryor passed away on December 10, 2005, at age 65, but his legacy is eternal. He shattered comedic boundaries and personal taboos. His openness about sexuality, even in passing or through posthumous confirmation, makes him a rare figure, an icon who was brave enough to challenge the expectations placed on him, not just as a celebrity, but as a black man in America. His story still sparks conversation today, proving that honesty, even painful honesty, can be the most powerful punchline of all. Anthony Perkins. Born on April 4, 1932 in New York City, Anthony Perkins will forever be etched into film history for his chilling portrayal of Norman Bates in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho 1960. But behind the psychological terror that made him a star lies a real-life story, just as complex, one cloaked in repressed sexuality, societal pressure, and a lifelong inner conflict. In an era when queerness could end a career, Perkins lived a double life, a Hollywood gentleman in public and a man quietly battling to reconcile his desires with the image crafted for him. Perkins was the son of stage and film actor Osgood Perkins, who died suddenly when Anthony was just 5 years old, a loss that cast a long, emotional shadow. The younger Perkins found solace in theater and cinema, making his screen debut in The Actress 1953. By his mid-20s, he had earned an Academy Award nomination for Friendly Persuasion 1956, and his boyish awkwardness paired with emotional depth made him a fan favorite among women and a prime candidate for the next big romantic lead in Hollywood's eyes. But Perkins was gay, and according to numerous accounts, he lived under the crushing weight of hiding that truth. His close association with Hollywood talent agent Henry Wilson, who also managed Rock Hudson, offered him some cover, but it came at the cost of personal authenticity. He had discreet relationships with several men, including fellow actor Tab Hunter and choreographer Grover Dale. Scotty Bowers, the infamous fixer and alleged pimp for Hollywood's elite, also claimed Perkins was one of his clients. For most of his life, Perkins battled internalized homophobia and even underwent conversion therapy in hopes of changing his sexual orientation. In a move many believe was orchestrated by the studio system to straighten his image, he married photographer Barry Berenson in 1973. They had 2 sons and remained together until his death. Even Berenson reportedly only learned of his same-sex relationships later in their marriage. Tragically, Perkins's silence extended to his health. In 1990, he was diagnosed with HIV, but he kept the diagnosis secret from the public and even from close friends. He died on September 12, 1992, at the age of 60 from complications related to AIDS. In a heartbreaking twist, Berenson herself died just 9 years later on American Airlines Flight 11 during the 9/11 attacks. Perkins's story stands as a symbol of a generation of actors forced to live inauthentically. His legacy is not only that of a talented actor who redefined horror cinema, but also as a symbol of the emotional toll of hiding one's truth in an unforgiving industry. Today, his name echoes not only as the man behind Norman Bates, but as a profound reminder of the courage it takes to live honestly and the tragedy when that choice is stolen. In a world where truth is often buried, these Golden Age icons dared to live between the lines even when history tried to erase them. Their stories show us that identity is never black and white, and neither is Hollywood's past. So what do you think? Were they victims of a cruel system, or silent rebels rewriting the rules from the inside? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Uncovered Tinseltown Uncovered, and share your thoughts as we continue uncovering the untold truths behind the legends you thought you knew.